Hi everyone, today we'll be reviewing the Asics Sky Elite FF2. That's really a mouthful, but FF just stands for Flight Foam, which is FLYTE, which is their proprietary foam. And this is the second iteration of the Sky Elites. I saw Coach Donnie's video on the originals, but I noticed that there's not a lot of information available on these shoes, so I thought I'd just go over it. Let's talk about the foam a little bit. Apparently it's made with organic fibers. It's featured on a lot of their volleyball and running shoes. When you see Asics, especially from their newer shoes, I believe they draw a lot of inspiration from nature. Take the traction pattern on the shoes, for example. It's very unusual, but it works very well and has a lot of thought put into it. And I can see a sort of natural symmetry, which is very interesting. It's quite different from conventional herringbone, and it grips very well. Let's start right off with cushion. Usually for basketball shoes, they start to talk about the traction first, but I feel like all volleyball shoes are pretty grippy, so we don't really need to discuss that. All you have to know is that I've had no issues with taking these to open gyms, provided you do the occasional wipe during break-in time. After break-in, you really don't have to worry about it. This non-marking rubber that Asics has is quite soft, and you don't really see any signs of tearing, although you do see it smoothing out here just a little bit, but in these places right here, the grip is quite phenomenal. So let's talk about the cushion. You've got quite a heel to toe drop, about 1 centimeter, meaning that your ankle is going to feel very high during the break-in period. It starts to calm down after breaking it in. Flight foam is quite an ingenious material because I experienced it as being almost like a permanent memory foam. After you break the foam in, it becomes harder and more responsive. It's supremely soft at the beginning, almost like a running shoe. I don't mean that it's lost cushion in a way, but rather the foam has become more responsive in the areas that I use it. I guess more dense, improving the energy return in those areas. After a while, you start to feel that the shoe is molded to your foot, and you can start to feel the heel to toe drop sort of normalizes, and you can really feel the foam under your heel. Even when the shoe starts to bottom out, you can feel that there's a lot more foam in the heel. The foam starts to stabilize around your foot, creating a sort of cup, almost like an extension of your footbed. Needless to say, it's really comfortable, bouncy, and low to the ground after you break it in. For the technology, we can see that the main point of the plastic stabilizers are found primarily under the arch, around the arch here, and the forefoot. You have this truss stick system, which is similar to many carbon fiber shank plates you've seen in basketball shoes. This one is made of a thick plastic instead. It's quite rigid at the beginning, but it begins to break in over time. This is my newer pair. As you can see, it's quite firm, but on my older pair here, you can see that the shoe has started to give a little bit. If you bend your foot at a certain point, you'll experience more flexibility in that area over time. It prevents the shoe from twisting too much, especially laterally, and provides a certain level of rigidity that helps with arch support and jumping. You can see here that there is an outrigger, and you can see it here a little bit as well. You've got this very wide sole base. This outrigger is mainly responsible for preventing ankle sprains and also helps with moving quicker laterally, as well as providing a larger base for jumping mechanics. It's a telltale sign of a great performance shoe for sports like volleyball and basketball. You've got a really subtle yet aggressive heel curvature, which is slightly angled to the outside of your heels. This will help with your jumping, providing more traction to those with steep penultimate steps. It's quite cushioned and it breaks down more over time. You can start to see the stress lines here. On my other pair, which is much older, you can start to see it's much flatter. Furthermore, you can see the external heel counter here, which is a softer plastic, again, reminiscent of many Kobe's, just like the Kobe 4. I'm sort of nailing this point in that they are really similar to low-top basketball shoes. It does a really good job of locking in your heel, but if you feel so inclined, you can use a runner's knot. They provide a 7th inlet just underneath the last normal one. It obviously comes at the expense of having shorter laces, but improving the heel lockdown. For those with skinny ankles like myself, you can try this to help with the fit. Otherwise, you can go for the mids. The colorways I have here in the lows is the men's white, which, as you can see, has more accents of gray and black. As you can see the lining on the inside. I've also replaced the inside here with a Nike insole. This is a size 9.5. I've sized a half size down from my normal for the lows, and here we have the women's white. I've also replaced the laces of these with some Nike Blazers because I wanted longer laces. So you can see some of the differences between the men's and the women's. You can see that the color blocking is just slightly different, but more or less they are the same shoe. They both look kind of ugly because the Asics logo was the same color of the shoe, so they were white and it was super hard to see the logo, so I've got it colored with an acrylic pen. From a distance they look really good. This is something that I can go over a little bit more in terms of the design of Asics and some of the gripes that I have with it. As they start to accumulate dirt, you can really see the nice paneling that they've done with the uppers. I'll put some graphics here of a guy that I met in an open gym, and he's just flying and he wears these shoes, and you can see how dirty his shoes are, but they look pretty good. Now, I want to talk briefly about the shoe's history. Asics is the official sponsor of Japan's national volleyball team, and you could almost say that you have some signature athletes down the line. For example, Yuji Nishida, the best left-handed opposite from Japan. They've definitely tried to push their brand more recently and are making a surprising come up in the running and casual wear. As you know, Asics has a direct history with the start of Nike, which is something you should research because it's very fascinating. They were, and I say were, the de facto best brand when it came to volleyball shoes. I would say that Kobe Bryant has had a large influence in the volleyball shoe philosophy due to his shoes being low cut, so good to play in, and it has now become commonplace to use basketball shoes instead of volleyball shoes. Nike now makes volleyball versions of their shoes. For example, the Hyper series, you have the Hyper Attack, which is just a Kobe 6, the Hyper Ace, and the Hyper Set, which is just a Hyper Dunk that's been modified for volleyball. As of making this video, the React Hyperset is again available online on Nike's website, so do check that out if you are trying to cop those retail. There's probably a few more, I'm not sure, but that's not the only reason that Asics is starting to lose the race against other shoe brands like Mizuno, Nike, Adidas, and to the person who's just been introduced to volleyball running shoes. They're very popular in Europe, and now they are trying to revamp their popularity in the US. I think they can start trying to improve their designs, which can mainly be done by providing more aggressive design choices. As you can see here, for example, you want to make it appealing to a larger audience, so start working on your designs, just something as basic as making a black and white shoe, or making their logo stand out more instead of these atrocious bubblegum colorways would help a lot. So that's my review of the shoes. Do check out my Reddit review of the Asics Metarise versus Sky Elite 2 for those that are trying to decide between the two. I go a little bit further into the history as well as the design similarities and differences of the two shoes. So thank you so much for watching.